Again, welcome back to session 2 of our Getting Started with Action Research course. Our question today that is framing our work is, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? In preparation for today, you have read some things around defining research questions, and you've done some learning logs that have been designed to help you formulate a research question. But before we kind of launch into this piece of work, we want to kind of just remind ourselves a little bit about about using some of the functions, because from time to time we will continue to use some of these functions on GoToTraining. So if you could, using the keyboard in the chat box where it says type message here, go ahead and just write in one good thing that's happened in the past week, whether it's a personal thing or a professional thing.
Oh, you lived in Greece? Oh. Okay. Yeah, so you lived in Greece?
So did Barbara add one?
No.
We're together on that one.
Okay.
Right, so Chris, just for your information really, in Doha they get time off during the Eid holidays, which is a Muslim holiday, and Doha being an Islamic country, everything closes. So Stephanie and Barbara, who are together today in Doha, are just rubbing it in that they've got 3 extra days off. What is that?
Yeah, usually you always had 2 days off for the second Eid, but
so
this time
they've got
it's an entire week.
Off, yeah, for an entire week. So whatever.
So they have a September break and then an October break as well.
But Chris, I mean, she caught up with her father for the first time in 4 months as he went back to Greece. That's lovely.
And Chris, just to let you know, we have been having some issues, some technical issues, both with GoToTraining and with Skype today. So I'm hoping that you're so close, we can almost reach out and touch you from here at West Lodge. But I'm hoping that that the audio continues.
Typing what?
I'm hoping the audio doesn't play up too much for you today. All right.
Let's run. Keep moving. Yeah. He's drinking water and the glass was there for ever. And you're frozen now and your mouth is open.
Just as a reminder of who we have with us today. Today we have Chris and Stephanie and Barbara. Again, we were still expecting Georgette to join us today, although she hasn't come online yet. We know that Chantal is probably going to be joining us next week for the first time. And Anjali is not able to join us today because her school is having a whole school faculty meeting, and her head of school asked her to be present at that today instead of joining the course, although we do expect to see Anjali regularly. If we go back to our, again, just where we are with GoToTraining, Latifah's just going to launch a quick poll again just to get practice using the poll. And we're, again, just gauging how comfortable you are with GoToTraining. I know that Stephanie and Barbara, you're going to have to share one vote today, so one of the limitations of...
You should now be able to see the poll, so go ahead. Okay, excellent.
All right.
So you're all feeling comfortable with it.
Great.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Latifah's going to close the poll. And again, whenever you have questions about GoToTraining, please do ask Latifah. If you've noticed that by tomorrow morning, you have not received an invitation for session 3.
It'll happen by sort of midday tomorrow. Yeah, I've actually got the day off tomorrow, so It's fine. I'll do it. But it won't happen till about lunchtime UK time. So if you can just bear with me, thank you.
But if you don't get an invitation to join by Thursday morning, please let us know,
Let us know.
and we will resend that. It's supposed to be automated. It should be happening automatically, but Barbara indicated that she hadn't gotten that notice this week. All right, so let's go back to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Barbara.
Stephanie just sent it to me, so I might be able to get onto it now.
Yes. That's okay. Don't worry about going on, because all it does is give you the connection. You already have that through Stephanie's computer.
Actually, I just want to say that when you get the every week you will get an invitation to join GoTo training for the forthcoming session, and you do need to click on that link and register. And once you register, then you'll start getting the reminders. So you get a 24-hour reminder and you get a 1-hour reminder. You have to register to get those. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna shift gears and begin focusing on the question for today. But before we did that, I just wanted to mention something very, very briefly, because I have had some emails from some of you about the learning logs. When we developed this course with our Harvard partners, we felt that it was really important to provide a very highly scaffolded learning experience. Some of you may find that we're providing too much scaffolding, and some of you may provide that we're not providing enough scaffolding, that you would like to actually have some other ways to think about, to work your way through the process of developing a research question or developing your assessment tools. If you find that we're providing too much scaffolding, please use the learning logs to the extent that they are useful. And what I mean by that, oh, I'm sorry, Chris is not getting audio, so I'm just going to pause momentarily while we try to figure out what's happening with her audio. About the attendees. Is it off? So Chris, your microphone is showing green on our machine. It's coming in and out.
Yeah, that's what we had this morning.
We had that this morning with one of our GoTo training
with one of our
sessions.
And GoTo training, yeah.
Should she disconnect and rejoin? Can she do that?
Not sure that she can. Chris, are you able to move to another part of the building? Maybe you'll get better signal. You could disconnect. I'm just afraid that you may not be able to reconnect. But
and Chris, it could be the signal strength where you are. With the Wi-Fi system, there are parts of the school where the signal isn't as strong. If you were in that same room last week and had no problem, then I would say that it's not the room. But if this is the first time you've actually joined from that room, it may be a problem with the location. Oh, right.
Why don't you try disconnecting, and then we'll keep our fingers crossed. I don't know what else to suggest.
Bye.
Bye.
So Chris is going to disconnect and attempt to reconnect.
Okay.
Apologies, guys. It'll probably be a couple minutes for her to be able to do that.
Sorry. So what's your weather like?
Oh, we've
beautiful rain.
It rained so much in the last week. Although the weekend was lovely, and this morning we had the most powerful power shower coming out of the sky. It just rained.
But are you wearing jackets? Is it cool enough for jackets yet?
It's probably like, it's still going up to like 17 or 18 every day, so it's still pretty warm.
What? Warm.
I knew you'd like that, Barbara.
I don't know. Can you see this picture of how this was last Friday? How grey the sky was.
We had rain
We had rain last Friday.
Oh, right.
A thunderstorm out.
in September.
Wow.
I've never seen.
The raindrops were falling and they were about this big
Wow.
as it started. Huge raindrops like this. It's incredible.
Chris is back.
Hey, Chris. Can you hear us now? Chris, is your sound any better than it was last time?
Hi.
Chris?
Sorry, I got the whole raindrop come.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
You heard about the rain?
Conversation. That was clear.
Oh, okay. She heard about the rain.
Oh, I heard about the rain.
Okay, we're going to launch back in. I started saying before that when we designed this course, we provided a lot of scaffolding in the form of all of those learning logs. And some of you will find that useful and some of you will find it just too much. Please use those learning logs to the extent that they help you get out of the course what you're trying to get out of the course. And what I mean by that is that please never completely disregard them. But if you think that it's sufficient to just kind of read through the learning log and type in a couple of keywords or phrases or bullet points in those response areas, and that's enough for you to be able to move on to the next piece, please do that. Don't spend a huge amount of time on a learning log if you think that it has limited value for you. The only reason that it's important to consider each learning log is that in most weeks, we're going to actually ask you to feedback information to the group in terms of what you did with the learning log. But again, if all you need to type in there is 3 words or 4 words to help you remember what you were thinking at the time, please do that. Please don't feel you need to type in long, lengthy narratives. Although, again, we have had people that found the narratives really useful for later learning. And so having said that, we're going to jump right into Learning Log 2.1. If you could pull that up, what I'm going to ask one person to do is to just walk us through the way that they completed the learning log. And the rest of us are going to listen. And then I have a different question for the people who are the listeners. So again, if one person could volunteer to walk us through their learning log as they used it. Can you raise their hand on here?
You can raise your hand using GoToMeeting. Because at the moment we've got we can't see you guys. So can you see that hand?
It's a little yellow hand under the if you drop down the attendees bar.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to click on that, so then we can see.
But if I click on that, does that mean I'm volunteering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can volunteer. We've lost Chris. Is anyone else concerned about that, or?
Chris is off camera, but I think she can still. I've closed my webcam. She's closed the webcam, so it's just so she can get better sound connection.
Okay.
Chris, can you hear? Do you hear us, Chris? This isn't good. Stop. I have to raise my hand with that button. Okay, so Chris, if you can hear us, then could you respond to...
So walk us through your responses to Learning Log 2.1.
I can go if it's easier.
Yeah, we can't, Chris, we can't hear you. We're not getting any audio from you, even though your microphone shows as being on.
I'm just going to stop sharing. I'm going to put this down a minute.
Yeah.
Because so we can see the cameras. Because Asha has got the camera switched off. Okay, Chris.
Ask her if she has a headset and microphone.
Sorry about this.
This is actually the first time that we've had a situation where someone could join, but they couldn't hear.
We had it when we were doing Standard 8. When we were at my apartment, we couldn't hear anything that was happening at the CABA meeting
Yeah.
with the
Huh.
other camp.
Wow. In the pilot of this, which was last spring, we were, hey, Chris.
Okay.
No headset.
Goodness.
You can't hear anything? Yeah.
Don't forget his little help.
I don't know where.
Or Doha. Come to Doha.
I can't hear her at all.
Yeah, how strange. It's quite ironic that we can hear and see Doha perfectly clear, but someone who literally is on the other end of the campus, we can't connect to.
And we have major problems with our Wi-Fi here.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm thinking, should we try bringing her in on Skype?
No, because that wasn't working.
Mm.
It looks like Chris is packing up. We can see her camera.
Yeah, that's
Some packing movements. She's going to go to a different location in the high school and see if that helps.
Okay.
Guys, do you want to, Steph, could you walk us through your responses? I know that's just the four of us now, but we'll catch back up with Chris.
I was going to try.
But I what? Okay, shall I go?
Yeah, if you would please. Yeah, 'cause
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
identifying a problem need. So I found this reading really helpful this week, actually, because I wanted to keep the action research problem, or my action research, to do with the Words Their Way word study program, because I have to still work on Standard 8 with the pilot group. So, but I couldn't really think of a problem with it, and we haven't started the program yet because nobody ordered the materials over the summer, and so they're just arriving now, so yada yada yada. But it was helpful, the reading this week, because it made me work in that frame where I already know that Words Their Way works, and so I came up with how can I authentically ensure that students transfer their Words Their Way word study learning to their writing in other curricular areas. And I came up with this because, based on my experience last year, some students, they kind of hold their learning in isolation. So during that particular week when they're looking at that pattern, they've got it and they can spell correctly, but then they'll revert to their phonetic spelling when they're writing the same word in another curricular area.
Yep.
So I thought that would be a good way to make it a more authentic learning, and actually it's when I was under the state 5 reasons why it's a problem, it means that now at that point their learning is kind of shallow or disingenuous, so it makes it much more genuine learning. That when they do that, it's really inefficient because it's time wasted on correcting and conferencing and then looking at other avenues in order to be able to spell correctly. It will mean that their confidence as writers and learners isn't growing as much as it should, and potentially it makes them less expressive when writing because they're frustrated by spelling. And then the state 5 reasons why it's occurring, I just put that incorrect spellings, somehow they're so ingrained that they just can't separate the incorrect spelling from the correct spelling, even though they've learned it. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to blame grade 1. So I said the proper path or resources weren't put in place in previous grades where they, dictionaries or word books. They might have an inability to link their experience during word study and other curricular areas. And then just this over-dependence on phonetics that they are, that they're spelling phonetically and not thinking that, oh, English can be strange sometimes, and then there's this whole other pattern that they're not considering. So that's what those were my responses for log 2.1.
That's great. I'm going to ask now we're going to share the screen back up, and the next question that I want you to think about in response to what Stephanie has said, as well as with your own experience of having responded to the prompts on Learning Log 2.1, what questions does this raise for you about identifying a problem or a need that can be addressed through a method like action research? And again, go ahead and raise your hands, just physically raise your hand, not necessarily on the screen. We'll go back to the videos. Yeah.
So raise your hands.
So thinking through those questions again, what questions does that raise about how you go about identifying a problem or a need? Barbara?
Isn't it that whole reflective thing, that whenever a problem comes up, you as a teacher are always reflecting on
Best practice.
on best practice and what you can do to solve something. It's that it's continual. That article that we read in the book, which said that whole reflective thinking. Yeah.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Chris, can you hear us now? I still can't tell if Chris is hearing us properly. Her video isn't absolutely.
Her sound isn't on. Oh,
there, she's just turned her microphone back on. So, Chris, are you hearing us now?
I got you. I was.
Poor girl.
Yeah, even for us, her audio is cutting in and out, coming back and forth to us. So, again, apologies for that, Chris. Just so we don't kind of lose our thread and our train of thought where we are, just a couple of the things that I would add to what Barbara said is that I think that one of the real challenges is that when we sense that there is a need to improve something, oftentimes it's coming from something that is happening with students. There is a student need, but we don't necessarily connect with that and identify that. And whenever we're improving something, it should always be it always is, not should always be, but I think the reality is it always is addressing a student need. But actually bringing that to the fore and recognizing that, what that actually helps you do. I thought it was interesting that when Stephanie was talking about the 5 reasons why it was a problem and some of the reasons why it was occurring, and she talked about things like shallow learning and inefficient because they weren't making links to the other subject areas, and lack of confidence. Those things, if you flip them on their head, now those are the things you're going to measure to understand when you're making progress. If you were to turn this into a research project, one of the things that you would want to measure is the extent to which you're developing deep learning, the extent to which you're building student confidence, the extent to which students are actually transferring those skills and applying those skills in the other subject areas. So by having worked through the problem in that way, you now have begun to actually answer some of the other questions that you need to answer as you begin to develop a more fully developed research question and research process.
And I think that I am going to take it there this year because we're carrying on with Standard 8. So I think that's going to be the vein that I go in this year now that I'm more accomplished at using the word study program.
Yeah. Chris is still having problems. And Chris, I'm going to suggest you try to connect one more time. And if that doesn't work, unfortunately, you may end up just kind of listening to the audio recording from this week. Apologies again. I know it's really frustrating when technology doesn't work.
She couldn't just call you on her mobile and listen to, like you put it on hands-free and would that work at all? Or?
Could on
A
speakerphone?
speakerphone, yeah.
Chris, do you want to join us by speakerphone on your
Mobile?
mobile?
Um,
I don't know if we would get interference or feedback from that, but
what? I don't think so.
so maybe just let's type in. Do you want to?
Um,
Oh, she'll need to get her phone.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see that bit. Um,
So,
okay.
Guys, we're gonna carry on while she goes to grab her phone because I'm not absolutely convinced that will solve the problem. But if it does, that would be terrific. I want to go on to the next question.
Oops.
So after you work through that learning log, identifying a problem, stating why it was a problem, try to state why it was occurring. In the next learning log, I asked you to brainstorm 5 possible actions that you could take to address that need. And then the next step of this was to take those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that represented those 5 possible outcomes and to put them into this matrix that looks at things on a scale from high effort to low effort in terms of how much effort it would take to actually put that possible action into place. And then the effect from low effect to high effect. Would it have a high effect on learners? Would it have a low effect on learners? And if you did this exercise, I wondered if one of you could just say something about how you found that, to what extent it helped you sort through all the different possible things that you could do. Again, so either Stephanie and Barbara, if you want to just jump in and.
Well, if we're talking about my project, what it's going to be, I was thinking about it today, and I was talking with a colleague in grade 2 while we were on supervision, and I was just thinking that I could change some of the activities that I already do in my word study rotation every week, so that they have to. It's less specifically about learning and sorting the patterns and then more using them. So Gabby was saying she does something called super sentences, and they've got to use part of their word study words to write sentences, and I was thinking how I could somehow contrive it to be integrated with the unit, so there's not just use it so that we understand what it means and they're spelling it correctly, so that there's more of an integrated, genuine, authentic use of the word, if it's possible, whether or not their particular word studies could apply to the central idea, et cetera, et cetera. So there was that idea. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I to be honest, when I started talking to Barbara, but I thought, well, we're going to work through this together because she's going to be my mentor and we're going to talk about it, or Chris is going to have a more high school scientific approach, because I know I'd read in one of the articles about the X and Y axis, although I couldn't find it when I went back, and how I can measure it. And so I kind of started thinking about some ideas I could do in grade 2, but I'm certainly not anywhere near where I have to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barbara?
Yeah, I mean, I sent you an email saying that, I keep having all these different ideas and stuff, and it is about assessment. I need to research now and talk to people about.
Can you not?
We could hear you.
You could. Ooh,
It works.
you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Hey.
Can you hear us?
Huh?
Okay. So the science office is better. Okay. So I apologise to my colleagues who can also hear you.
Okay, so do you want to carry on, Barbara?
Okay. You look like you're waiting for something now. Go to say something.
So, hello?
No, keep going.
No, the box didn't move to me, so. Okay, now it has. So what was I saying? I need to now research and decide what it is. I think I kind of know what it is that I want to do. I think for me, what was difficult is that it isn't really a problem. There isn't a problem in my class. So I think trying to look at it from this aspect that there is a problem, it's not with my students. The problem is not the problem, but it's me that wants to change something. And if I change something, how am I going to assess that? Because it's very non-cognitive, So
Non-quantitative.
and non-quantitative, you know what I mean? It's not something. If you want to measure enthusiasm and that's what it's like that in that book, that man who wants to, he learned, he was this love of reading was awakened in him by this teacher and everything. This is what I want to see, kind of thing. I saw it last year. Because last year I saw it in my class, and I want to see if I can do that again with this year's kids who are completely different. And then, of course, last year for Standard 8, I used MAP, and MAP did not work at all. So that was more concrete, whereas this is not. So I think you need to come to Doha so we can talk about this.
Yep. No, thanks for that. I mean, and I think that one of the things that you're quickly realizing is this is, when you're talking about research, it is complex, and they're not easy, straightforward, simple pieces. And I still think that it would be that the question that you're thinking about right now is absolutely doable as a piece of action research. And I think that you'll see as we go along and we add some additional layers that it really will work out just fine. So don't abandon that. Keep following that idea. And we'll keep working on developing that. Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know if Chantal has spoken to you at all, but we were having this conversation in the kitchen the other morning at 5 o'clock, as you do, and she was, I also don't know what to do. And then what's nice is this working together is that I was like, well, why don't you do that? And she was like, oh, no, that's a great idea. I don't know if she's going to go with that. And we were able to talk about this, and I think that's, not having you in the office. So it's
Finish your sentences.
finish my sentences. I kind of wish there was more of immediate guidance. But anyway, we'll get through it. I'm glad what you sent me today was I think what put it more clearly in my head.
Good. All right.
So we've got Chris on the phone now. But we've got the phone on speaker, so what we're getting is feedback.
And it's very light. As long as it's not distracting for you, we'll just keep carrying on. I mean, the feedback is really kind of faint at this point. So, Chris, I'm hoping that this helps a little bit and that you can hear what we're saying, at least, even if you can't communicate back. So we need to go back to the...
Sorry, it's the when the sound comes in and out on the actual computer, that's when I'm getting the confusion, because it's delayed on the computer. And so I'm hearing now I can hear myself twice, myself you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, shall we just see how we get on with it, and then, yeah, okay. Oops. Okay.
All right. In preparation for today's session, you watched a short video, and the video talked about how to develop a research question. We are going to take just a couple minutes and watch this video just to kind of remind ourselves of the content, and then we're going to look at some research questions, and we're going to kind of pick them apart and try to figure out the extent to which they meet the criteria that the presented in the video, which is, are they manageable, are they important, are they open-ended, and are they focused? So first, let's take, again, another look at the video, which you looked at this week in preparation for class.
I was thinking the other day about an undergrad class that I teach on study skills and how to be successful in college. And I was trying to figure out, how can I encourage my students to complete their homework, to turn it in? They don't always turn it in, and when they do, they don't seem to follow all the writing suggestions that I give them. Sometimes it's just punctuation and formatting, but other times it's basic organization and even a thesis statement. But I'd really like them to simply put in the effort and turn in the work. Without work, I can't help them with their writing. And this is how action research starts. I have a problem. Well, actually, I have two problems. If we get looking at it, I have a lot of problems, but let's just focus on two today. Problem number one, my students don't like to do their homework. And problem number two, their writing's not so great. Now, we need to determine some common causes of the two so I can find a possible solution. Number one, maybe my students are simply lazy. Yeah, but that doesn't really get me anywhere. I can't actually work with that. Two, perhaps they don't see the benefit of doing homework. That one might work, but other than failing them, passing out Fs, or maybe giving them candy when they walk in with their homework, it's not going to be too fruitful. Now, there is a third option. Maybe they are not entertained enough by the homework assignments that I assign. I'm not suggesting that they should feel like they entered a circus every time they do homework. But are they engaged? Or are they always bored? Now, this is something I can work with. How do I motivate them? How do I get them involved in their own learning? I need to look at what I'm doing already. One, I usually assign a chapter of reading each night and ask them to write maybe a 2-page response in which they relate the concept from their chapter to their life, to their schoolwork. For example, describe your reading habits. Do you like magazines? Books? Do you maybe read mostly online? Maybe you just read for school. Maybe you read for leisure, out of school material. Discuss how reading techniques that you found in Chapter 8 can improve not only your reading, but your study habits too. So what am I not doing? Well, what if I had them write online? Maybe blogging. They could even link other websites, videos, and findings online to the responses for further explanation and support. I could cut the writing requirement down by half, having them only write 1 page, and then they could respond to 2 other students' reflections. That would make up for the other page. Sound familiar? And since I teach 2 sections of the course, I could even implement 2 different frequencies of online writing and compare them. One class could have the majority, if not all their writing, online and always responding to each other, while the second class alternated each assignment, handing in maybe half of the assignments in a hard copy form, while the other half were online. There are 10 assignments altogether, so this would work out nicely. And then I get to compare. So now I've thought of this problem, I've looked at some causes, and I have a general idea of what I want to do, but what's my question? Well, first thing, it needs to be important. It needs to address the problem directly and for the benefit of the students, and probably myself too. Number 2, it needs to be manageable. The question should not be too broad, like, how can I help the students turn in homework? But not too narrow either. I really need to look for something right in the middle. Third, it must be contextual to the class. I don't want to reconstruct my whole class or add extra work on myself or my students. It shouldn't be about what I need to add onto my class to improve it, but what I can change or adjust to improve the situation. Fourth, the question needs to have focus, as it actually relates to the classroom, to the problem at hand, and to the student. Next, I should consider whether my question is an open-ended question, not just a yes or no answer. I don't want to start with did or anything. try starting with how or what or why. If you're looking for a yes or no answer in this field, you're barking up the wrong tree, right? And finally, the question should be reflective. You should be able to reflect upon your findings, not only the data and what it says about your students in the classroom, but also what it reflects upon yourself and your strategy. So let's get back to my students. Okay, there's a guy and there's a girl. Okay, now here we're back. The problem is that they don't like to do their homework, and generally I need them to do that. And some causes that I thought of is that they're not engaged, they're bored, and they don't see the benefit. And I've reached a general idea of how I might look at a solution. I decided that I'm going to use some technology, some blogging, and responding back and forth through that. So now I'm back to, what is my final research question going to be? Well, here's what I come up with. How will incorporating technology, the internet, into homework assignments improve participation and motivation? Let's see if it fits our characteristics. 1, is it important? Yes, it's about student success and how I can improve my teaching strategies. Is it manageable? Well, the use of technology focusing on the internet is narrow enough to place some limitations so it doesn't get out of hand, but it's not too broad. Is it contextual? It fits into a day-to-day schedule, not adding more than I can handle. Does it have focus? It's about the problem and students, so yes. Is it open-ended? There's a how, so I don't have to plan on getting a perfect answer, but I get a variety of possible solutions in the data. And can I reflect upon it? Well, yeah. It will tell me about student motivation and how they respond to one another, and it will help me better understand the technology in education. Now, of course, I could add other questions to this research, like how do peer evaluations improve the quality of student work, in which I formalize the student responses a little bit more, and maybe even set a peer evaluation form for them to fill out. And I always have one of those peer evaluation forms handy for them. There we go. There it is. Other questions that I could ask is, what is the relationship between student participation and motivation with multimodal work? I probably wouldn't ask them to have a multimodal aspect to all of their essays, because that's when I start adding way too much work for them. And really, it's way too much work for me. And that's no good. Look at all this stuff. We got the computer going on, we have the multimodal, we have the essays, and then it goes over here, we have more homework. What am I going to grade all of this? And we've talked about this before. This is just driving us insane. Focus on maybe one question, and that's about it. And that's about how you do it. First, look at any problem that you have in the class. Then look at the common causes that are leading to that. Are they bored? Are they not engaged? What's going on? Do you need more technology? But of course, these are just ones that I've used. Then you need to determine a possible plan of action. Look at that questions and having all of those characteristics that we just talked about. And then develop the question. And after that, you have the next step, the fun part, doing it. But that's a completely different notebook.
Hey, Barbara and Stephanie, we're joining you again with our audio, so you should be able to hear us again. I'm going to leave the screen up for now, and we'll just kind of talk over the screen, which we should be able to do without any problem. Chris has left us. The audio problems were just too difficult to kind of fix today, so apologies for the time that we've taken trying to figure out how to accommodate that. It's like I said, it's the first time it's happened that it's been so significant that we haven't been able to get it fixed in a couple of minutes. So thanks for bearing with us. I am going to change the kind of what we do as we go forward, because it's just the four of us now. And so we'll do this a little bit less formally than I had prepared it for the session today. But what we're going to do in just a moment is we're going to look at a couple of research questions, theoretical research questions, and we're just going to dissect them, and we're going to analyze the extent to which the question appears to be manageable, important, open-ended, and focused, which were four of the criteria that you just saw presented in that video clip. So here's our first question. And again, this is a hypothetical research question posed by a teacher working in a classroom. And the question is, if I make a contract that will reward students for independent reading, how will this change the amount of time students spend reading? And again, if you guys, we'll do this rather informally, but if you want to work through those four things and decide, is it manageable And if it is, why is it manageable? Or if it isn't, why isn't it? Is it important? If it is important, why? If it isn't important, why? Is it open-ended? Is it focused? So how about if we take turns and have Stephanie go through the first one, and then Barbara will go through the next one, and we'll go back and forth for a couple of times.
So I'm looking at manageability.
Yeah, so actually go through all four. So if you look at that question, talk about all four of those characteristics.
Well, I think it's really dependent on the individual teacher. Personally, I find it really challenging, these types of things. You know, we use Class Dojo to support classroom management, and we're going to a house system here as well. But I always get overwhelmed by points and making sure it's updated, and where's my phone, and I can do it on my phone. Oh, my phone's locked, and I've got to add points, and you know, and so I make it a classroom job. But then sometimes it's inequitable. So for me, I always find things that are point-based or rewards-based difficult to manage. So I would struggle personally with that. Is it important? I think independent reading, I think, is really important, but for me, I wouldn't go with a rewards-based system. Although, having said that, we do use RazKids, which is an independent, and we love it, independent, and it's rewards-based in that, I guess, the difference is that I don't have to manage it, but you know, they get stars for doing their reading, et cetera, or completing running records for us. So I guess I'm contradicting myself there.
But what is the reward? So that you've got a contract. I mean, you want children to read because they want to read, not because they're getting a reward for it. I mean, you know.
That's the importance. Then it becomes disingenuous. Are they doing it for reading, and are they actually benefiting from reading, or is it just superficial and they're getting rewards?
Yeah. Why do they not want to read?
This is my time, Barbara.
Sorry.
What about open-ended?
So yeah, open-ended. Well, yeah, it's open-ended if you can. Do you mean in terms of the length of the program?
Just the question itself. Does the question suggest that this researcher is going to approach it in an open-ended kind of being receptive to whatever comes out of it kind of way?
No, I don't think it's particularly open-ended. If they read, they get rewarded.
Right. In this part, when you're reading research questions for the open-ended question, one of the things that you want to try to decide is if the question is answerable by yes or no, then generally it's not open-ended. But whenever there's a word like how or to what extent or why embedded in the question, that those tend to suggest that they're more open-ended questions than not. And with this one, we have how will this change the amount of time students spend reading? So he's not trying to, he hasn't presupposed how it's, you know, what the change is going to be. He has left it open-ended by using a how question. What about focus?
I suppose just based on my own experience, I guess I'm a little bit jaded about it, because I just think that, yes, it absolutely will change the amount of time that they're reading independently. However, what's the level of quality of independent reading that's happening?
Yeah.
But then, that could just be my experience with my class last year than this year, because I haven't had this class very long. And is it focused? To me, it seems really broad, like in general, but I guess that's just the way that the research question might go. I mean, I suppose it is focused in that they're just looking at independent reading.
Great. Steph, thanks for that. Just as another shorthand for analyzing these questions, one of the other more fundamental things you always want to think about in a question is, in the question, can you tell what the person is going to do, and can you tell what they're going to measure? And in this particular case, even though when you get down to the details of manageability, importance, open-endedness, and being focused, it may not measure up so much, that at first glance, because it's obvious that this person is going to introduce some kind of a contract system for the purpose of rewarding independent reading, and what he's going to measure is the amount of time students spend reading. On the surface, you might say that this is a pretty good research question, but as Steph just pointed out, when you dig a little bit deeper, you actually find a lot of opportunities for refining the question. One of the reasons that the question is so important is that the question is the foundation that you're going to build everything else on. So if the question is not focused enough, if it's not open-ended enough, or if it's too open-ended, if it's not important, if it's not manageable, this really sets the tone for everything else you're going to do. By having a tight, precise research question, it makes the rest of the process much easier. Barbara, here's a question for you. Go ahead and take this one.
Why are my students lazy?
Cameron,
Yep.
Blakey.
So if that was a research question, how does that measure up to these criteria? And I should say first that if you were going to even apply that more simpler criteria, what is the person going to do and how is he going to measure it? That already some of those things would not be evident in that question. But go ahead and take us through the other four things.
Well, if I start at the bottom, I mean, it's not focused on anything. So, you know, why are they lazy? When are they lazy? Where are they lazy? You know, so that I mean, it's completely
Subjective.
It's completely, you know, they might be lazy in PE, but they're fine in, you know, in music or whatever.
But it's one person's opinion of laziness.
Yeah, I mean, lazy is such a. It's just, yeah. This is, yeah. I mean, this is not a research question.
Yeah.
This is a.
Of those four elements, are there any elements that are in this question that are reflected? So if you were to kind of try to find the good point to give this person who wrote this first kind of a little bit of encouragement, is there evidence?
Well,
it's manageable.
I think it's open-ended because there's lots of, you know, it's not a yes or no answer. So, you know, why are they lazy? There could be, you know, there could be a lot of reasons.
It's 50 degrees.
You know.
Yeah.
But that's probably all I'd say. I mean, there needs a lot of work, that one.
Okay.
Even I know that.
Since that one was so easy, Barbara, do you want to take this one too?
Thanks, Ben. Nice one.
If students do their homework, will they learn more?
This is particularly relevant. We had parents' night last night, and homework is always a big bugbear.
Mm-hmm.
So this is extremely relevant at the moment.
You know, is it manageable? Yes, I think if you phrased the research, if you phrased the question in you know, what homework will they do? What will you give them, and how will you measure whether they've learned more? So it could be measurable. I think it is important. You know, there's so many differences in opinions when it comes to homework that you know, you could structure this to be research both for or against homework. I think it's open-ended.
So remember, our criteria for open-ended should be that the question isn't answerable by yes or no.
Yep.
So, well, yeah, I suppose.
How.
So how? Okay.
Will they learn more?
Yeah.
Yes. Or no?
No. Yeah.
So how could you rephrase the question to make it open-ended?
How much more will students learn if they do homework?
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Yep. So you could quantify and say how much more, or you could, that would make it more open-ended.
I think it needs to be more focused on what kind of homework would they do, and how would that then be measured?
Okay.
Even if you were comparing types of homework, you know, so you were, homework is going to happen. Parents want homework. Let's compare e-homework to paper-based homework. You know, is there a difference in terms of engagement, and so therefore are they learning more? So I think maybe if you were comparing types of homework, but much more narrow for sure.
Yep. Let's look at one more question and just see how this one measures up based on all the things you had said about the previous three. So Stephanie, do you want to lead on this, and then Barbara, you can add?
I'll give it a go. If I use a project-based approach for teaching the learner. Ooh, fun.
See, I would love this.
Yeah, me too. It'd be fantastic. Is the research question manageable? Before I use a project, yes. I will students during learning. Okay.
What makes it manageable?
What makes it manageable?
Yeah.
Well, I said yes, but then I was thinking I would need something to compare it to. So I would have need to have done a project, or I would have need to have done a unit on the geography of Egypt in another way in order to measure their enjoyment of learning and understanding.
Okay.
So maybe it's not manageable.
Yeah, no, but the fact that this is obviously a unit. Egypt is a unit. This isn't something that goes on through the entire year. This is a chunk of the curriculum, and it's a chunk both in time and in subject area. Yeah.
All right. So you mean I just compare it to another unit that was not project-based?
Yes, or a project-based piece that was about another subject.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that it is manageable in terms I'd be comparing two units that I delivered, one in a project-based approach and the other not.
Yeah. Probably in comparison to some of the questions we've looked at, this one is perhaps more manageable, although there's still room for improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it's particularly manageable because at my grade level, most units they do the summative is a project.
Yeah.
To allow them to we don't do written summative assessments. Is it important? Yeah, absolutely. For engagement, it's extremely important. That's what makes their learning authentic. Is it open-ended? Yes. How will it improve and change? And is it focused? Yes. Yeah.
I think so.
It's a good one. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of the four that I've shown you, this one purposefully is the one that's been most developed. So we wanted to look at some of the bad examples first, and then kind of come to one that was a little bit more developed. So thank you for that. I did want now to. There were a couple of more of those, but we're going to go right on to the case study. And the case study was Learning Log 2.4. In this particular case, the reading was just literally reading the section of this published article called Lisa's Story, which was it was about 1, 2, 3, 4, it was about 5 paragraphs. So it wasn't a huge amount of reading on which to kind of base some conclusions. But the question.
We read the whole thing.
Oh, you read the whole thing?
Yeah.
That's probably.
I actually
were saying to each other. Sorry.
So we already know that. Yeah, we couldn't answer it because we're like, but it was really obvious. Sorry, we did it wrong.
No, that's fine. But I do think that at this early stage, the more kind of published results of an action research project that you read, the clearer it becomes about what the process is. And again, that whole idea of how do you keep something, focused and manageable and open-ended becomes clearer and clearer by actually looking at real examples of things that other people have done. In this particular case, just based on the front end of that case study, we do see that she does eventually, toward the end of that little excerpt, that she comes up with 2 questions that guided her research. But I was wondering what you thought the problem is, or what some of the problems might have been that she was responding to. And again, this is following up on the task that I had you do in terms of thinking about this in terms of problems.
Well, I don't know if it's because we read the whole thing, but I wrote down disengagement and the disruptiveness.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is a problem that many second language teachers face is as a challenge is their behavior management. And it's, why? Why is it because because of the understanding, or
I think that's a really good question. I don't know that much about the more specialized kind of preparation that language teachers have, but there's some interesting questions about how it might be different than someone who's training to be like a generalist to teach lower school, or someone who's training to be a specialist at the high school level. I mean, are there people who are language specialists who are language specialists specifically for younger children, and was that this person's background? I mean, there are lots and lots of questions around that. What about this next one? If this person came to you before she started her project and asked you for steps that you would suggest to help her get a clear picture of the problem she's facing. And again, you talked about some of those problems, the behavior. She's trying to encourage enjoyment and engagement. She's trying to improve academic performance. How could she have gotten a clear picture of what she was actually trying to solve? Because it did seem in reading that her kind of description of the problem was based on observation and feeling.
Barbara wrote a response to that.
I just said I think she needs to reflect again on why the students are being so disruptive. Is it because they don't understand what to do? Do they not understand what she's saying? Or do they not understand why she's trying to teach them in a certain way in that TPRS? I keep thinking it's TPES. Mm-hmm. So I think my head was full of that reflexive. Reflective. I know this is on my, So how is she? Why are they being like this? And maybe in talking to colleagues and stuff, they can come up with an answer or something, a suggestion. Come on,
it's difficult. It's right away I was struck that they're just not engaged, and especially with the observations that the other person made, I found it really fascinating about the girl that was playing with the piece of string. Mm-hmm. And then that then she was a visual learner, and how then the engagement it improved. And I guess the trick is always just knowing what engagement how to improve the engagement based on their particular learning style or that group, or if it's just the dynamics, or if it's the time of day, or there are so many factors. But because I read the whole thing, for me it kind of came full circle, and I thought, oh, that was really great. I don't know that I would have done that. And just to jump ahead, I don't know if I would have done, in terms of addressing the disruptiveness, I really liked that she taught them of ways to disrupt, I just thought she made that into a learning experience, and I thought that was brilliant. Yeah. So I don't know, I really enjoyed the article in the end, which I wasn't supposed to read, but I don't know if I would have come up with something as good as what she ended up coming up with, or what her friend advised her to do. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I don't know if anything to add to that. But I think that's a really interesting kind of explanation and perspective on having read through that. I mean, certainly one of the things that motivates people to publish their results. I imagine that she probably may have even surprised herself with some of the ideas that she came up with, which is why she pursued the opportunity to share it with other people.
Yeah, I just think when I was reading it, I thought, I don't know if I would have had that much inventiveness. I would have been like, well, separate Megan and separate Jeff, or whatever his name was. Clearly they're just not paying attention, and just keep repeating their names, etc., etc. But really what she did was so much better. So it really, I stepped back and went, wow, have I just fallen into these, with the class that I have right now, all these old school things of like, stop doing it, you've got to listen, and you've got to focus, and da-da-da. And really what she did was so much better, I thought.
Yeah.
But I think it's different. You can probably do this easier with a high school group.
I don't know, but
I think they'd be more receptive to actually understanding what the method is behind this.
I don't know. I think you can apply anything to kids personally. I think until you try, you can't really say. Kids are amazing, so.
Yeah. All right. we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to now look at your research questions that you wrote, except instead of following the rest of the presentation that I put together, because it's just the four of us, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn back on our video so that we can see one another. And I'm going to ask you to share your research question, and we're going to try to give you feedback in terms of those four criteria: manageable, important, open-ended, and focused. So we'll have one person do it, and then three of us will give feedback instead of doing it one-to-one. So Stephanie, do you want to go first?
Okay, well, it's exactly this. So my research question is the one that I said already.
Okay.
In
Let's
that,
say it again for us.
okay, so I already know that Words Their Way works. How can I authentically ensure that students transfer their Words Their Way word study learning to their writing and other curricular areas?
Would it be better if that was written down, if that was typed?
If you want to type it into the chat box,
Yeah.
that way we can.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, please.
Barbara.
I have to read it.
Bossy boots.
I have to read it, otherwise I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Already.
You see, if you typed yours up in the first place, you could just copy paste.
She's happy to delegate.
Use this.
Extra feed classroom. Let me just.
Is it manageable?
So let's go back to that first, even more basic criteria. So when I read your sentence, can I tell what you're going to do and what you're going to measure? Again, that's kind of a very, very preliminary filter. So what I can tell is that you are going to, I think what I can tell is that you're going to use Words Our Way, and what you're going to measure is how or to what extent students transfer that learning to the other curriculum areas.
Right, so it's about spelling.
Yep.
So if they're doing the long A patterns of AI, you know, they're spelling weight correctly during word study time, but then at another class in another curricular area, they're spelling it W-A-T-E still. They're reverting to their phonetic spelling.
Okay.
So is it learning in isolation, or is it genuine learning and they know how to spell weight?
So if I were to challenge you to take those ideas without changing the ideas and restructure them into the format of the writing prompt on the top of Learning Log 2.3, in that if I, and then stating what you're going to do, what will happen to the, and then the change you're trying to bring about that you're going to measure.
So I was on the correct page, and Barbara says, no. Yes, that one. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Well, it has to be a lot more specific. So if I what? So I need to think about what. how can I measure it? And that's the broad part, and that's the part that I need to give some consideration to.
Yeah. So again, for me, if I'm going to look at again those 4 criteria, that one of the first things that I say is I'm not really sure what you're going to do. I mean, that's the part that doesn't come across strongly. I mean, I can sense what you're going to do, but it's not explicit in really, really simple terms. So again, in a research question, one of the things that you may be looking at is that even though Words Our Way may build a whole range of language arts skills, that to begin with, maybe you're going to look at specifically, I mean, is it spelling? Is it the transfer of certain rules from the Words Our Way lessons to the other areas? There may actually be like a whole set of smaller questions in this bigger question. This may be almost like a super question that has a lot of sub questions that are part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of doing it is that these kids, to help them to spell. And so if there's no transfer of it, then what's the point of even doing it?
Yeah.
Then I might as well just correct everything in isolation and be like, yeah, okay, now you're spelling it correctly, but now you're not, and it doesn't really matter because. But that's the part when I was speculating. Okay, well, I could change some of the things I do during the word study routine in order to encourage it to be a little bit more authentic, like make sure there's a larger writing element to it instead of just sorting and then play the game this way, et cetera, but an actual writing. And then I just haven't figured out how in other areas how I can more specifically demonstrate how they can transfer it to ensure that they are transferring it. So that's the part I'm working on.
Yeah. So again, if you were going to reframe that question in the if I, so in the if I, and then what action you're going to do, how will this improve student spelling in other subject areas?
I don't know yet, Ben. I'm not sure.
So as an example, that would be one way that you could again take the idea in your question right now and frame it in a way where both the action, what you're going to do, and what you're going to measure become completely obvious. Because again, even though I can look at this and I can think that I think what you're doing, it's not explicit yet. So as you work toward refining the question, I would just say kind of work toward that level of making it explicit. And again, to the extent to which that prompt, that if I, what will happen to, forces you to do that, maybe try to force it into that space, and then you may be really uncomfortable with the awkwardness of the way that that's worded. But then by doing that, you'll be able to now take it back into a statement more similar to what you started with, but that ticks more of those boxes in terms of making it a really, really clear research question. Yeah. Great start. I mean, I think that, again, the premise for where you're going is really, really good. Yeah. Barbara, how fast can you type?
Well, sorry. So, you help me. I mean, you help me with this. But, but I wanted to. Then I just had another idea now.
Yeah.
Okay. Mine revolves around the Daily 5.
Yes.
And the Daily 5 is writing and reading comprehension and spelling and word work.
Yeah.
So the word work has always been, I've had a set of activities or whatever that they can choose. So when Stephanie was talking, I was thinking, see, in the Daily 5, when you do the writing, spelling is not important.
Right.
Spelling's not important. It's all about just free writing. So when Stephanie was talking, I was thinking to myself, well, what if I did, because this is my first year for Words Their Way, did Words Their Way as part of the daily 5 rotation. So, because every day we would do Words Their Way. So technically, if we were doing Words Their Way every day, and then I was still doing word work in daily 5, that would be like 2 lots. Why not just combine it and then try and incorporate, yes, have the free writing, but like Stephanie, encourage that Words Their Way writing to filter into that, the Words Their Way spelling to filter into the rest of the program, especially in their writing, you know, so that we are in, and this would modify the daily 5 a little bit, but yeah, so you wouldn't just be free writing, it would be a little bit different, a little bit more focused on those spelling rules.
But not so strictly, just by happenstance, you know, where you see the transfer in a kind of a natural way, you know, to reflect their learning, if they're conscious or unconscious of it.
Maybe put more of an onus on them, you know, when they're doing their reading, to look for those word patterns and that they're doing, that they've done.
So Barbara, one of the things that idea does is it makes the research question more manageable, because now you are in control over all of those things. If you were actually trying to look at the extent to which students were using the Words Our Way, what they're learning through Words Our Way in other subjects, you'd have to now be coordinating with other subject people and looking at the things, looking at the assignments that they're giving and looking at the extent to which they're following the rules they're learning in Words Our Way. You've made it more manageable now because you're in control of everything. You're actually managing both parts of that learning. You're managing the Words Our Way piece, and you're looking for them to apply that in the daily 5 activities. Yeah, so it becomes much more manageable. I mean, if you were to, I will point out that's completely different than the question you wrote up on the screen, which is also a really interesting question.
This is why, Ben, I've been freaking out, because every time I blink my eyes, I think of something else. But then, Stephanie, maybe you could flip it, and so you could daily 5. I learn Words Their Way, and you learn daily 5.
Right, but then for me, that becomes now
my research question.
A broader thing, because I'm introducing. Now I'm not trying to make sure that their learning is more authentic using a program I know works. Now I'm introducing another program.
Yeah.
I get it. Normally I would partner, but
it's just you. You know, if I look at that thing, what will happen? So mine, it says, if I modify my literacy teaching pedagogy or methodology, what will happen to the levels of engagement in my students? So, I don't know if the question and that is disconnected but
that just seems really broad, like the one, if I set up a reward or contracts and rewards with my students while they're independent learning.
It's too broad.
I would say that it was to refer that to refine that research question as part of what you do with your literature review or going out and looking at what other people have done. You may actually, and I would recommend that to make it a sound piece of research, you'd want to have a specific approach to creative writing or a specific creative approach. And it may be a model or an approach that someone else has developed. It might be a commercial product. It might be any of those things. But as soon as you begin to narrow it and define it, it becomes more focused and more manageable. And actually the question becomes clearer and clearer and better.
You see, that's the other thing I thought of. So I went online today and I downloaded the Writer's Workshop guide. And I thought, right, maybe I must use a Writer's Workshop. And then of course, but my particular interest is in boys, because I did that course earlier on boys writing.
It's 7 o'clock on the eve of Eid. Come on.
Yeah, do I? What did I have lost now?
Boys Club.
Yeah, the boys. So I went to this thing in Istanbul earlier this year, and I did this course with this guy who's particularly focused on boys writing, and I'm starting a club after school. Just for. So should I go with the club and just focus on them? Do a research question based around this club and just leave Daily 5, but then again, is it still going to be linked to Standard 8? Do I just do Standard 8 separately? You see,
it becomes linked to Standard 8 when if you were to frame this question around what you're doing with your club, and then if you take what you learn with your club and bring it into your classroom, so in your club you have a much more controlled setting, and you can actually learn something much more quickly because you have a much more controlled setting. And then it becomes a question of how do you, when you transfer what you've learned by working with those boys in your club to your classroom, what result does it then give you in the classroom? So it's an amazing way to approach Standard 8 because you're actually not only coming up with a different teaching strategy, but you're trialing it with students who are similar to the students who you're going to be teaching before you actually introduce it into your class. So from my perspective, that's a really strong way to approach Standard 8.
Oh, okay. So.
Yeah, I rocked it.
Well, guys, I'm going to be really aware of time and say that I'm happy to continue the conversation for a while longer, but I do recognize that it actually is 7 o'clock there. So with the research questions, we are going to come back to the research questions in the next 2 sessions, because every time we add this new layer, we're going to go back and say, right, now that we've added this new layer, is the research question still right? Does it still make sense? Is it still worded properly? Is it still asking the right thing? So we are going to come back and revisit this a couple more times. You guys are both off to a great start, and I think the fact that you're grounding this in a real piece of work, which is your Standard 8 work, is going to make it a lot more meaningful and give you something that you can actually use. So I'm really glad that you're able to use it that way.
Yeah, it just makes sense, right? That if we're going to carry on with the pilot, it has to be something that's practical and that we will see results. I mean, for me, there's just no reason to do it otherwise. It has to be authentic.
Yeah, I think again, just to kind of make sure that we don't kind of get delayed in this way. Again, that I think we're going to put down a ground rule next time that if we can't resolve someone's issues within 10 minutes, then it's going to be our best recommendation. That they kind of join and watch by video afterward. So I apologize and thank you guys for bearing with us as we were trying to correct that. We've never had a situation where it's taken that long to resolve it. It's the first time that we've had someone give up in all the times we've done this. So apologies for that. But
don't apologize.
Don't apologize. I think for us, we've benefited from just a small group. This is exactly.
You had to deal with us though.
When I used to just be able to come to an office and say, Ben, I don't know how to do this, and that's kind of, what I miss, and I'm going to need some help I'm not going to be able to formulate this question on my own,
Well, I mean, you kind of have. That's good.
But I have to write it down. That's the other thing. So.
Which means I'm going to write it down.
Don't apologize. I think, it's not like.
No, she was just clearly frustrated, as I would be too. But it's one of those ICT things that's just beyond your control.
Well, guys, again, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We did go through all the material, and we haven't left anything out as a result of this. So thanks for doing that. Next week, when we come back together, we're going to be going on to session 3, which I don't have the note for right now.
Session
2.
We do. I don't have session 2, but I have session 3.
Well, next week we're going to be looking at various databases where you can find find literature relating to your question.
Yeah. So
support your question.
During the session next week live, we're going to give you some tasks to go online to a database and look for information. In the event that you haven't done that, and even if you have done that, it's just a useful exercise to remind yourself how to use some of those searchable databases. So. And we're going to do that in preparation for helping you actually find a couple of pieces of literature that relate to what you're working at by using a searchable database, an academic database. So that's what we'll do next week. And again, we'll revisit your research questions for the next couple of weeks. Email us anytime if you want to test out a question. You say, this is what I think it is. What do you think? Just send it off to us and we'll get back to you right away.
Okay.
Guys, enjoy
Thank
your
you.
week break. I would say it's well deserved, but if I don't get it, how can you deserve it as well?
Let us tell you about that, Ben.
Yeah.
Let's tell you.
It is well deserved.
Just to follow up, so with Chris, she's going to email us her notes. So, and she's going to read the notes and look at the video from this.
Yeah.
So you just want us to respond to her notes or just read them, or what would you like?
If you want to give her just a little bit of quick feedback via email, that would be great.
Just using those 4 prompts that we talked about.
Okay.
What was that, sorry?
Manageable and
All right, okay.
Yeah, manageable, important, open-ended, and focused. Yeah. All right, guys.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your break. Work ahead if you
Bye.
like. Plenty of reading there.
all right.
I am.
Take care.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
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 See you.